So there are some strange things happening in Great Falls, Montana with their election system. And we're going to be talking about that today here on the Left Wing. My name is Desmond Price. I'm the host of the Independent Thought Podcast. And we are joined by my guest, Jasmine Taylor, who is the chair of the Election Protection Committee in Great Falls, Montana. Jasmine, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it. Great Falls, city that I grew up in, town I graduated high school from. Been hearing some unfortunately troubling news coming out of the city, over the last few years. And when you first brought this story to me, I feel like we had to discuss it on the show. Could you tell us, just in a brief sense, like what exactly is going on with the election system in Great Falls? And for those who are wondering out there why this story is so important, we are definitely going to get to that and how it affects people, not just in the state of Montana, but in the entire country. So Jasmine, what's going on in Montana, in Great Falls, Montana?
So what's going on in Great Falls and Cascade County is that our clerk and recorder that was elected is an election denier. She is part of that extreme far right kind of QAnon group that believes that Trump won the election and has called for drastic and potentially illegal changes to how we vote here. And it has dramatically changed the functioning of elections in Cascade County.
Okay, so let's go into a little bit some more details about that. What exactly was the first thing that she changed, and how was it impacting like how people are able to vote in the city, in the county?
The first thing that she changed, our Great Falls Public School District contracts with the clerk and recorder to administer their school board elections. That contract was in place before Sandra Merchant, the clerk and recorder, was elected, and they requested an all-mail ballot. All-mail ballots are cheaper, they're far more efficient. That was something that had been discovered over the years and obviously give people greater access. And Merchant refused to do a mail election. She missed all of the associated deadlines to object to having a mail election, but ultimately she did a hybrid poll and mail election, and she made significant errors in the administration of that election.
Okay, so what exactly were some of these errors that were happening? And was it just one time, or were there more than one election that was messed up by her?
That was the first election. And then there were several subsequent elections in which she had duplicative errors. One of the things she forgot to do was purge the voter rolls of individuals that had been deceased. That's supposed to happen before an election. So unfortunately, a lot of families got ballots for people who had already passed away. There were individuals who did not receive ballots. It looks like an entire district did not receive their ballots that should have been eligible to vote in the school board election. The more concerning issues were things like duplicate ballots, people that were getting 3 or 4 ballots in one envelope, people that were getting ballots that had their address and then on the security envelope had a completely separate person and a completely separate address. So the functioning of delivering the ballots themselves and getting them to the correct person and the correct address, it was terrible. And we had people sending us pictures to confirm these errors and to report these errors to the public.
So obviously, when we're talking about elections here, in an off year right now in 2023, not as prevalent as it probably would be talking about in 2024. But, like why, before we get into all the rest of the things that are going into like what's going on, like with this person and what she's been doing and some of the drama around what's happening in the city, just for those out there who are wondering, why is this race so uniquely important to what's going on from a national perspective?
Yeah, I can see where people would think Great Falls, Montana might not have a national impact. But really what it is John Tester is going to be up for re-election. We're the 3rd largest county in Montana, and it's incredibly likely that Tester's election and who holds control of the Senate in our country will come down to what happens in Cascade County. And at this point, we likely won't have election results we can trust. We may have the whole country waiting on us to know if John Tester wins Montana, and we won't have reliable information. So it will be an embarrassment on the national level if this doesn't get resolved before Tester's election.
So here's the main question that I have for you. Is this just a matter of like, hey, this person's just bad at their job and they don't really know what they're doing? Or is this more of something that you would say is, duplicitous, or they're trying to like actively sabotage the election system? Like what is your read? What is the local feeling about this person and their ability to do the job?
This has been a discussion quite often. I mean, I think the incompetence has been proven. The malfeasance is kind of implied. Sandra Merchant, before her election, was one of many individuals from this far right group that signed a petition that called for stopping all mail elections, purging all of the voter rolls, eliminating all electronic voting machines, requiring hand counting of all ballots within 24 hours. And really, this is the like Mike Lindell playbook. This is the big election conspiracy lies. This is what they're all pushing for. So she signed on to that before she ran for office. And then she won and has been making her way down that list, doing many of the things that she advocated for in that petition.
So let's take a step back here for a minute and say that somebody's coming to this conversation, they don't really know that much about why something's good, why something's bad. Let's break this down a little bit. Why is advocating for mail-in ballots to be taken out of the equation, why is that a bad thing? Like what exactly is the repercussions of getting rid of mail-in ballots?
Sure, that's just kind of one of the easiest methods of voter suppression. Montana has elections differently everywhere, but in Great Falls, we have one polling place. We have a super polling place
Hmm.
at the fairgrounds. And so if you can't make it on election day because you have to work, because you're out of town, you rely on a mail ballot. And something like 80% of the voters here use mail ballots.
Yeah.
Uh, they're more accessible for individuals with disabilities. They're more accessible for people who work full time. Most people aren't getting election day as a national holiday. But we have found, that attempts to limit access to voting typically target a specific socioeconomic group. They're typically going to have more adverse effects on people who aren't white. The writing on the wall is very clear about why they do this, and it's because they only want a certain person to vote. And that person is usually white. That person is usually of a higher socioeconomic status. That person is usually going to have transportation, which is a major issue where we have almost no public transportation here. And those individuals with all of that access are more likely to vote Republican.
Okay. So kind of along those same lines, I mean, like obviously that's addressing the mail-in ballots, but you were saying there was also some issues with the voting rolls. You were saying that she was advocating for purging everybody off of the voting rolls. What was the reasoning for why she wanted to do that, and what kind of effect would that have if that had happened?
Well, that is part again of that big lie that, oh, dead people are voting or people are voting more than once. It's
And she
solving a
was sending out
problem.
duplicate ballots and ballots to deceased people, but okay.
Exactly. It's solving a problem that doesn't exist. It's a completely manufactured problem. And so there's literally no benefit to doing it besides the hope that it will stop people from voting. That's the intent.
Okay. So when we're talking about, I guess some of the, not just the issues with, like voter rolls or mail-in ballots, but there's also been some people like in your city who have been trying to like raise alarm about what's going on and trying to like bring attention to everybody else. But what have been some of the challenges that you have faced trying to like bring more light to this story?
Well, I think the concern is that Sandra Merchant and her supporters are really part of a school of thought that is very militia oriented.
Hmm.
Um, Recently, they brought a speaker to town. Again, he was one of that like Mike Lindell kind of group who was talking about voting and the Amish way of voting. And he did a big
The Amish way of
presentation.
voting?
That's what they call the hand counting,
Oh,
Amish voting.
okay.
Yeah, all hand counting, no electronics. So they had the speaker come in and he talked about Sandra Merchant several times, like they were old buddies. And his suggestion was for when we go protest outside of the clerk and recorder's office, they should just shoot us. Don't call the police, just shoot them. Um, and that's was well received. And our clerk and recorder was in attendance. One of her staff was in attendance at that. And so when you have people cheering about the idea of shooting peaceful protesters, I think that's a good indication of what the temperature is here in Great Falls.
Yeah. So, I mean, is there any kind of like deterrence from local law enforcement, or what exactly is that just being allowed to like persist there, or is the media covering this correctly? Like what is going on around there?
Part of the problem is there's really a scarcity of local media. We had the Great Falls Tribune for years and years, and that's basically gone now. They're covering breaking news 5 days after it's happened.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, so we have had to generate the media about it, because the average citizen isn't informed about it. Great Falls is not a wealthy community, and these kind of very specific niche issues, most people aren't going to have it on their radar when they're worried about trying to pay the rent.
yeah.
Um, so we've been contacting media with everything that happens, and we've kind of just acted as collecting the information. That's what the Election Protection Committee is doing. To send us a picture if your ballot's incorrect, email the commissioners and ask them to do this. We've just been kind of a central hub for that. And then when we find important information, we send that to media.
Okay. So the Election Protection Committee, what is the overall goal of what you're trying to achieve by bringing light to all of this? I mean, is there a way to, I guess, recall this person, or what exactly is the aim of trying to like bring more light to this situation?
Yeah, we're just an ad hoc group. We're nothing formal. But the goal is to get Sandra Merchant away from elections. She can't do it. She has proven that she can't do it. She has 2 lawsuits against her right now, and the county attorney is not representing her. They declined. Mako, which is the organization that does county stuff, is not paying for her attorney. They declined. So she's got a private attorney representing her out of, I want to say, Bozeman. That's costing us a ton of tax money. Uh,
Oh,
and if
okay.
if we allow this to continue, there's going to be lawsuits every election because she simply doesn't know how to administer them. Um, she hasn't learned from her previous mistakes. We had a library levy shortly after the school board levy, and the library had to get a court-appointed monitor because Merchant was not doing her job. It's
Uh,
not going to improve. It's not going to improve. And again, is it incompetence? Is it malfeasance? Either way, it's demolishing our ability to have free and fair elections. So we formed because we want to protect free and fair elections in Cascade County. And the only foreseeable way to do that is to remove the election duties from Sandra Merchant.
Okay. So I think one of the, like final questions I have for you here is when you speak to people about this in the Great Falls area, what has been the reception, I guess, of trying to bring more light to this? Are people, I guess, responsive to it, or are they kind of like apathetic, or what has been the reaction?
You know, I've done a lot of different kind of community work in Great Falls, and I would say this has probably the most bipartisan support of anything else that I've worked on. Um, we've had we have a Facebook group, we have email lists, and we actually have a number of Republicans that have contacted us with concerns and asking how to get Merchant out of there. Folks that voted for her and now regret it.
Mm,
Libertarians in Great Falls are incredibly concerned about this. The Democrats are incredibly concerned about this. So I think people that know and understand what's happening are concerned and upset.
yeah.
The broader challenge is getting folks who aren't maybe attuned to local politics to know what's happening, and to know what to do when they don't receive their ballot or their ballot has the wrong name. That's been the harder part, is just raising awareness of this is going on and it's going to affect you, and here's what you can do.
Okay. Now, I know we had asked about like getting her out of office, but is there a way that maybe like she doesn't have to be involved with the elections themselves? Is there any kind of way that maybe somebody outside of the city can do that, or is it something that specifically only someone elected in the community can run the election?
There is a way that she would not need to be involved, and actually it's up to the county commission what duties are assigned to clerk and recorder, and they've already taken away one department from her that my understanding is she didn't want to manage, did not object to it being taken away. After all of the issues that have occurred, the superintendent of schools actually contacted Merchant and the county commission and said that they would like the county commission to remove election duties from her. That would require hiring an election administrator. And that's actually something that the committee is in support of as well. Hire a private person who is not affiliated with any party. As an employee, there are far more checks and balances for being a county employee if you can't do your job. And then that oversight would come from the county commission. And, per Montana code, it is entirely lawful to make that change. I believe 4 other counties have already done so. And it's honestly something that other counties should explore as well. Because just the very notion of your election administrator being a partisan person is problematic.
Yeah. So, just to kind of like wrap this whole conversation up, we started out talking about like, why is this, so significant? Obviously, any election issue anywhere is significant, but this one seems to be affecting people, not just within that community, not just in the state, but actually like nationwide. So with the Senate elections coming up next November, people will probably be concerned about whether or not this will affect things, because we are looking at a system like nationwide here where it's more than likely the Senate might come down to like a couple races, across the nation. So how quickly does this need to change in order for it to not be an issue come next November?
I mean, realistically, to get the change in place, because it will require some public meetings and things like that, we would need this done by like December 31st at the latest. Then you would have to advertise and hire for an election administrator. What goes into a federal election is pretty significant. So we're kind of coming down to crunch time here. And that's part of why we're trying to explain the urgency of this to everyone. Is we have to make this happen right now. If we get to that federal election and she messes it up, which she will, it's going to be a disaster. And it's going to cost us a lot of money.
Absolutely. Jasmine, I appreciate you doing all of this work that you're doing over in Great Falls. If people are watching right now and they want to find a way to, I guess, help out in some way, shape, or form, how can they do that? And how can they reach you online?
Yeah, so they can look for the Election Protection Committee Facebook group. And then we also have an email address that I probably should have looked up before I did the interview today.
We'll make sure to put it in the episode description.
Beautiful. I don't run the email account. So I'll get the email address as well. But what we're really asking is, folks are about to receive ballots for a city election here. It's going to have neighborhood councils on it, which don't follow your district. And folks are not going to know if they have the right ballot or the wrong ballot. So we'd love for them to contact us with questions about their ballot, pictures of errors. We'll report that to the Secretary of State, and we'll take care of that as well, as far as tracking it and documenting it in case this ends up in more litigation.
Okay. Jasmine, we appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you so much for doing so. And please continue to keep us updated on everything that's going on with what is honestly in a ridiculous situation going on over in Cascade County. For those who are interested, the links that you want to have in order to reach out to contact will be in the episode description, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much.